everyone, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here with the new PB&J card class, and today is the third video in a series of 5 of my top 5 versatile card making products. And today's video is featuring the Frame It die cut from Penny Black's recent release, Scent of Spring. And you see it here on a couple of cards. And before we begin, I just wanted to mention what makes a product versatile to me. And the first is it makes stash more usable by giving already owned stamps and dies a home. And I'm really going to focus on that in today's video. But it also can make new items more likely to be used because it gives them a home. It can work for multiple seasons and occasions, coordinates with multiple styles from cute to elegant. It's easy to use and it has a classic look and style, so it's not overly trendy. And this Frame It die set totally fits that for me. Here is a look at that die set. And like I said, it is great because it can give a home to so many different products, either new or old, that you may have. So to create all of these cards, I use kind of a stash busting technique where I like to prep items in advance. So here I'm showing you what I've done in advance. I have grabbed some of Penny Black's newest embossing folders. The first was dots and dashes, the second was rounded, and then I went through my stash. I shopped my stash for some of my favorite floral dies. So that's what is in all of those envelopes. So I just have a box. This is how I store my dies. Very fancy, as you can see. I keep them in envelopes. I have pieces of cardboard labeled, and I just keep them in a photo box like that. So these are in my flower nature section. So I went through that. I shopped that stash, and then I went ahead and did all of my die cutting in advance and my embossing. So you'll see each of these envelopes has a couple of frames, a backing piece trimmed down for the frame, and then die cut flowers. And I cut those from colored cardstock. I don't typically do that, but what I did is I focused on lighter colored cardstock, which I can then ink just to give a little bit more dimension. So I went with a large frame and a small frame for each color combination. And then I'm just following a similar sketch for each one. So I'm just showing you here, each one of these envelopes has everything die cut ready to go to make a card. So I had this die cutting session, and then any time then I can come in when I have a little bit of time to do some card making and get creative, pull out one envelope and work on that card. So it's just a fun way to sort of organize your crafting. And again, what I love with this is that just by this one versatile die, this Frame It die set, you can go in and make lots and lots of cards, and it gives a home inside that frame or around that frame to products you may have in your stash, or if you have new things that you've purchased, it gets them used because this particular product gives them a place to go, a design to work with. And so I'm just showing you here all of these different sort of card packs that I've made for myself. I try to cut extras, so while I'm cranking it through, I'll cut extras. That way I have plenty that I need. As you can see there, I can play around with which flowers I want to put together, just sort of like putting them onto my pieces. Also, I store anything left over back in the envelope with the original die. So that red flower I just pulled out, that was one I had made months ago, stored it in the envelope, and then when I went back to shop my stash, it was already done. So I thought, well, I think I like this. I'll use it just as it is. So this is where I'm starting from, and you can see again that Frame It die is on each and every card. So I'll show you then my process for a couple of these cards. When I grab my envelope and I'm ready to craft, then I just get to doing some inking and having some fun. So I'm using some Mermaid Lagoon Distress ink and an ink blending tool and a foam pad, and this is my favorite way to use embossing folders, is to just lightly ink over the top, and it just helps you to see that beautiful embossing design. I'm doing a couple of colors here to get a nice turquoise color. Now, everything that I'm using, all of the Penny Black stamps, dies, embossing folders, everything will be listed and linked for you down in the YouTube description box below. I will also list for you all of the colors that I'm using, so inks and ink pads, and all of that will be listed for you down in that YouTube description box below. So there's a section for penny black supplies and a section that says other supplies, and that's where everything else will be for you. So here I am just working on this design. Again, it's so fun. Everything's already cut, and so I can just sit down and enjoy this step of the process. Now here is where I wanted to show you. I have a little fingertip sponge dauber and my distress ink, and I cut these flowers from a light pink. I knew that I probably wanted to go red with them or more of like a magenta pink. So instead of starting from white, which you certainly can, I do that very often, but because I wanted to ink the flowers instead of paint them, I didn't want to start from white as much just because that's more inking and sometimes my hands get a little tired when I'm doing that. So by starting with just a light colored cardstock, then I can go in and add my inking on top and it will sort of fade from dark to light. Now this particular flower die, this is called Koi. It is not a layering floral die, but it's so easy to use. So what you can do is just cut it from a green cardstock, or again, like I said, or you could just go white on everything. But I just went with a very pale sage green, and then I'm inking on top of it to give it that handmade and dimension, colorful dimension that that inking can provide. And then all I'll do is just trim off the top of the flower and glue it on top of the stem. So you don't have to have a complicated layering die to get a really pretty layered look. Now I really like with this frame it die, I'd love to put a couple together. So I cut one from the colored cardstock, which was just from my stash. It's a little bit thinner paper. So then I also cut some white from a heavier weight so that I could layer them together. You could also put foam squares underneath. Now here I put a little bit of glue on the back of the flower and put down just a little scratch piece of yellow paper to give that more of a layered look. Now here is what is so fun. With that frame it die, you can play around with all the different fun ways you can arrange these flower dies inside. Now I'm doing this for sort of springtime, everyday, birthday, any occasion type cards, but you could use this frame it die for Christmas cards, Valentine's cards, autumn cards. You can put anything inside of that frame and follow the general design that these cards are. You just get to pick whatever you put in that frame. That's why I think it's such a versatile product, because you can use it so many different ways, and it enhances either new things that you may get. If you are purchasing something and you don't know how to use it, you say, oh, well, I could put it in that frame. And then you don't have to think so hard. Or if you have the new frame, it might be really motivating then to go back through your stash and use some favorites or things you have in your stash you haven't used yet. The frame would maybe get them onto a card and get you motivated and excited to use them. So I am just using a little bit of regular Scotch tape to tape that backer piece to the frame. Once I had positioned some of those items coming out or sort of bursting out of the frame, and some tucked inside of the frame. Now I also have a few little flowers that I'm adding around, and I will pop up these ones with some dimensional foam tape. And then I will add these on here. These are really great cards. Like I said, if you have just a little bit of time that you can work on things, you could do like I did all the die cutting, then just your inking, then come back at another time and glue all the pieces on. So you can just work little steps at a time here and there on these cards. I'm going to trim off the excess here from the bottom, and now I have that pretty framed piece. So I will assemble the card. I went ahead and I trimmed down that dots because I just liked a little touch of that and the flowers up above against the white. So I'll just save that in my packaging with my embossing folder, and I'll probably grab for it on another card. And I've taped down that rounded, that's those dots, embossing folder, and I'm just going to add a little strip of white cardstock on there to create a seam. And that is a nice way, if you like this card design, to just give it a finished look. Also, if you haven't cut something perfectly straight, it will hide it for you. So I'll trim off the excess. And then all I did was add my sentiment and that framed piece, the frame it with the flowers on top. Now, for fun, what I decided to do is for each colorway, I would do one small frame and one larger frame. There are 3 frame sizes in this set. I think this tiniest one would be really great for sentiments, putting a sentiment inside. But for my cards, I'm using the largest and the medium size. This is the largest size for this card. But I'm going to do one card in each colorway using the small and the large. So sort of like a little version and a big version. And so now I'm working on the big version in that same colorway. So I'm using our watering can die. Again, this is from a previous collection. I just shopped my stash, which I think is really fun to do. And it's more motivating for me to get into my stash when I have something new to put it with, like this frame it die, or I know exactly the card design because I'm following this similar sketch for each card. Now these are just the leaves from that koi die that we used previously, and so I'm just using those with this watering can, but not the other part of the flower, cutting from that light colored cardstock. This is that flower I had in my envelope already done. So I'm just going to put a little bit of inking on top of it and to match it up with the style. I do like the way it looks with just a little bit of inking. I'm using little fingertip daubers. They have just a sponge tip on the bottom, and then you can apply your ink with that. And I do think that is just great what a little bit of inking can add even on top of colored cardstock. And now I'll begin assembling this card. I have my frame it die, and I'm just going to put a little bit of ink around the outside. And for this backer piece, so this is a piece that goes behind the frame on the card, I'm going to ink this with Toffee Crunch ink. Now I just trimmed this down using my paper trimmer so that there is some overlap of the frame on top of it. And then I'm going to do just a touch of stamping. This is our footnote stamp. I'm stamping it in that same Toffee Crunch ink just for a really subtle tone on tone look. And I love the way this looks once it was layered. So I layered that back behind the frame, just use a little Scotch tape. Here is my assembled die cut piece. Here I'm having it all sitting on top of the frame. And I added my sentiment and the card is complete. Now all of these cards are standard size cards, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. So I'll go ahead and show you here this whole collection of cards I made. This is what I made using all of those items that were inside of those envelopes that I went ahead and die cut again. Each one has that frame it die on it. And you can see I followed that stamping, just basically following a sketch but mixing and matching with items from this my stash on there. Here I did that beautiful embossing folder. I love that dots and dashes embossing folder. Did it a little bit higher than I did on the first card and did some inking on top of it. Here I used that embossing folder and backed the frame with it. So if you peek in there, you get a little bit of that texture, which I think is really nice for that white on white look. You can see you can use these frames with really big dies or smaller dies. There I've returned to that stamping on the bottom and adding my sentiment. And you can even turn your design. So here I've used that smaller die and done a horizontal orientation for my card. So I will show you some still shots here of each of those cards. And if you stay with me, I also have some more ideas, more card ideas for how you can use this Frame It die set. I think it is such a fun die set, and like I said, really versatile because you could use it any season. You can put anything that you want in there. I would love to know from you, What would you do with this die set, with this frame it die? Would you use it with flowers, critters? How do you see yourself using it? Leave me a comment down below. I read each and every one of your comments, and I truly, truly appreciate them. You guys are so, so encouraging, and you keep me inspired to keep sharing. So I just wanted to give a thank you and a shout out to all of you that leave such kind comments. For us here on YouTube. We're so glad to have this community of stampers and card makers here joining us on YouTube. There's just a couple more looks here. I actually love these white on white cards quite a bit, especially with that embossing folder on there. Now, if you see a particular card that you really like, I will have our blog post that shows each card individually, and it links exactly what products are used on that card. I'll link that for you in the description box below. Now, here are even more card ideas that you haven't seen in this video yet, featuring this frame it die. So I wanted to show you even more versatility with this. You can use it with different types of stamps. So here I've used it with a critter. I've done a stamp with a cutout die, and I have that popping out of the frame so you can get like a peekaboo look on your card. Or you can take your stamped image and just layer that over the top of the frame. So the frame kind of recedes in the background, gives it a finished look, and you can create almost the look of a very simple scene, and there's room for a beautiful sentiment there. You can back the frame with an embossing folder and then add whatever you would like on top. Or here I've used that frame just as a very subtle layering element behind my butterfly. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and it's left you inspired. If you did, please be sure that you're actually subscribed to our channel and hit that bell notification so that you receive a notification every time a new video uploads. You can also follow Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, as well as Instagram, our website, and blog. Everything is linked for you down in the description box below. Happy stamping!